Welcome to Even Odds Show. I'm Carly. Welcome. Show? Welcome to the Even Odds Show. I'm Carly.
I'm Matt.
And today we are going to move our channel into a new direction. Yes.
Boldly go where split infinitives go.
Yeah. So we are working on developing a game. We have done game reviews in the past, but we're going to move into the realm of of
our own stuff.
The whole thing of creating and just the whole development process of getting something from, its infancy and that spark to getting it to sharing it with people and providing something in the world. Yeah,
it's a lot of information. It's a lot of things to digest. So perhaps if you join us in this journey, we'll save you a few steps somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
Give you some encouragement, something like that.
Yeah, we just thought, we've looked at a lot of Kickstarters and we've bought a lot of games, and, there's a good amount of just that sort of curiosity when you see stuff, even just on the shelf in the store, and you're like, how do people do that? And I mean, maybe you're 10 steps ahead of us, but that was sort of just well, maybe somebody could gain something from just kind of being with us and sharing in on the whole thing. So that's what we're doing. Yeah.
So it seemed natural for us to maybe start off with, inspiration and where does the, I mean, it's not just the you wake up one day and you're like, I want to make board games.
Well, I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, yeah, there is that, but it's not you don't go I want to make board games and now here's the idea.
Right. Well, that's actually part of the point that I was talking about is that idea of forcing inspiration versus it being natural, and that kind of that whole, what's the saying sort of about desperation, if desperation ever looks good or something on anybody, right? You're just you so badly want to do something that you're trying to make something happen. And a few years ago, when we were really into the gaming hobby, we had started trying to develop a game, but it came from that place of we just want to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't good.
Yeah, it wasn't a good game.
I mean, the theme we had for it was fun. But the game
rental car excitement.
Yeah, it was silly and weird, and but the game
we just couldn't connect with it. We were trying and
so we sort of put that away for many years. We didn't really, we continued with our love of board games and buying games and playing games, but we didn't really spend any time or thought or anything on making a game again. Until recently. Yeah.
So it was just sort of something that just came to me, like a lot of that kind of stuff does. And so the lesson, I guess, that further on down the line that we started talking about from other things that we've read and listened to that are about, creativity and inspiration, was that idea of you have to allow your life to come in for the you have to not just be so singly minded focused on one thing always. The sort of common wisdom and or the common process these days almost seems to be that that uber into something, you're single-minded into this hobby and you don't do anything else but that, or whatever it is in life.
If you don't eat, sleep, and breathe that thing, then you're a poser, or you're an outsider,
or somebody has a gatekeeping moment where they're oh, well, of course anyone who's into that already knows about that, where have you been? But it's you basically have to have spent every day, all day, being into that particular thing to have reached that level. Right. And so we were talking about how you get to these real genuine inspirations, though, for creativity from being able to have a well-rounded life. And
to be able to be open to sort of receiving the inspiration from the cosmos.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or less like froofy than that, but just like genuinely from like having actual substance, you know,
It's true.
from people, from books, from movies, all the things, like having a well-rounded sort of just
Like
go,
life
yeah, and
experience.
like letting yourself just sort of relax and not being desperate
Mm-hmm.
for something, some inclusion in
Yeah.
something or whatever. And of course there's a balance, because that single-minded focus is like what the
Is
world
good in certain
rewards.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good and worthwhile for certain things, but you can't, like we experience, you can't force inspiration. You can't go like, this is the thing, and if I just like plug away at it like nonstop, it's going to eventually, it'll just click, where it's like you have to at least have a little bit of you know, that sort of like that aha moment, you know.
Yeah.
One of the big things that I always think about with this is that I saw sort of a like an inspirational message one time that was you know, how you have to make time in your life for allowing like inspiration. So it's just like, you know, there's like a common, I think there's this sort of like thing that you realize as you get older and wiser, where it's like, you know, there's no such thing as I don't have time for XYZ. It's that you make you make choices on how you spend your time. And it's not that you don't have time for one thing or the other thing. It's that you choose not to spend your time on that. You choose to spend your time on something else. And so it's the same thing with this, like with inspiration. It's like you have to choose to spend your time doing these other things, doing these, like you said, the more well-rounded life, to be able to have that, like, you know,
right, the genuine spark and inspiration in it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that inspirational post, you know, message thing that I saw, it was that, like, you know, it's like if you want to be a writer, it's like make time to just read, you know, make time to just like relax and let your mind wander and dream and have ideas, you know.
Right, it's like the old saying about, you know, like you're born with one mouth and two ears or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know, like you
so you have to spend
right,
twice as much time listening as you do talking,
right? You know, so yeah.
But,
and it reminds me, you were telling me about a post, I think you said on Board Game Geek, that you were reading about someone asking the question of whether or not high fantasy was a good theme to use in games, or if it's like overdone,
or if it's like played out.
You know, and we were talking about how like for myself, I would think it would come from, well, how genuine is your inspiration?
Yeah.
Right. Like, are you trying to make a game with a high fantasy theme because you think that's what's going to be popular and you're trying to make a popular game? Or is that something that you genuinely love and you're into, and it's coming from this like authentic place of, I want to create like a cool game in high fantasy?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's like that's a big like portion of it too, is like you have to, when you do have the inspiration, you know, and you have an idea that you're like, this is it, this is the money idea, you have to walk that fine line between going like, this is my idea, I'm going to do my best to stay true to it, versus, which I think was probably the point of that person's post, was that they're like, well, but if I stick true to it, is there a market for it still? Is there, will other people, you know, see my vision and see my passion and be, you know, moved to partake in it, which is definitely a hard question to answer. And it's like, I feel like that question is probably the impetus and the like root cause of like why so many people do have that like forced mentality of going like, you know, I'm just going to go right into what is popular or what is you know, best selling or something, because they think that if they do that, then their thing will be popular or best-selling as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting question in general that we don't really have the full answer to that other than kind of just what we can see through observation or guess or, but it's sort of a, if you have yourself tried to do any kind of these, Kickstarters yet or any other sort of like effort to start any kind of.
Or if you're like working on your idea.
Right. Yeah, whatever it is, there is that sort of like when you're just like the new kid on the block, it's very overwhelming how many other people are also trying to do the same thing. And you end up with a lot of this, like, this feeling of people, just, playing the game, or what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like,
I don't know
like,
what this is. I don't know. Like, I was going to say checking the boxes, but that's not what you do when you
like shuffling, like a network, like what's the word for like hustling? Like hustling, yeah, like, and the sending, like the whole constantly trying to I don't know, but it's and maybe that's something that works if you just keep getting in people's faces and it doesn't like, and I mean there are so many things that are made by like larger companies in the world at large. It's just like, well, okay, people are just, they flock to a brand, a known entity, rather than giving some chance to something that might be superior quality, but it's an unknown entity because it's just lost in the masses of all the people trying to do something these days. So it's kind of a strange thing to navigate in general, and then to not get discouraged. But if you're coming from a place of genuine inspiration, circling back to the original thought, right, then there should still be a motivation or some kind of like genuine confidence that you'd have for yourself and your idea, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the confidence in your idea is like it's a really important part. We were discussing this a few days ago, and we discussed this a little bit this morning before we got any of this filming stuff set up, that like, one of the big hallmarks for like what I call, like $1 million idea, right? I'm not the one who coined the phrase $1 million idea, of course. But, I mean, so it's not, well, I'm just saying it's the way I said that.
We're actually,
it made it sound like I was like
cryogenically frozen.
The $1 million idea is this.
We were actually cryogenically frozen.
Yeah, but
and then we came back from like 100 years ago,
right.
And now we're bringing the
we
wisdom
fell into the water in the
century
Arctic and
prior.
Ended up in a glacier that's melting now because of. Anyway, so one of the hallmarks of like a really great idea is that when you have it or when you tell it to someone else, the reaction is like, well, that must be done already. Someone,
well,
it's like so obvious, or it's once you hear it, you're like, oh, of course, like something with that. It's like it's like, oh, it must be around somewhere.
Well,
and then
theory,
that's sort of the importance of the confidence in it, because what we have, just to talk about our game for a moment, is a game that the reason that we started making it is because we thought of it and we said, certainly there must be some game like that. And then we started searching and then we searched some more, because what we actually did at first was go, we would love a game like that.
Yeah.
We would love to have a game like that. And
I had thought of something from my childhood and I was like, is there a game like that? Where you can, put all these weird things together and make like a fun sentence that like is just kind of abstract and artistic, and and I started searching for it and I was like, there's nothing like this. That's weird.
Yeah.
So,
so then that's the worry then, is when you don't find anything like it and you go, okay, so my idea, at least on some level, is unique, and then this is where the confidence, we're tying the bow now. This is where the confidence comes in, because I feel like we both have been in this sort of like waiting for the shoe to drop moment.
Yeah.
Like as we've been working on it, as we've been developing it, taking it from the very core of the idea to going, okay, it doesn't exist to the best of our search ability. And so we're going to start making it and developing it. And we've shown it to a few people now and stuff. And it's like, it's just this constant, like, I'm so terrified of the moment that we're going to show it to someone and they're going to go, oh, so you just copied blah?
Right. Yeah.
And we're going to be like, oh, it's just going to be like a world shattering moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because one of the people in the very early stages we play tested with your mom, and you know, she was like, the very first thing, she didn't even see the game, and she's like, well, you aren't going to plagiarize something,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You know.
I was like, man, what an insult that was. I was like, wow. I'm
You know,
gonna
I
plagiarize.
was like, no, we're not going to plagiarize something.
Yeah. What a rude thing to say.
Well, but I think everybody's so used to that. Again, the world has exploded in the last, couple of decades or whatever.
Right. Well, and then there's the whole nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, and even more so now, where it's just it feels like you're gonna step on something that kind of already exists at least. And not to say that our idea is like, oh my gosh, it's the innovation of innovation. It's not. There are other things that have like roughly sort of like little sprinklings of closeness, like in the like we found like one game in the sort of like children's education sphere
that was similar.
And then
but like that's the closest thing we could find,
right,
which is like
not really what we're going for, which has like a lot more like adult and adult cards and things like that. Not necessarily like in a vulgar way, but just mature. In a more, like a more, advanced way of thinking about everything. But
so I mean, it's tough when you have the inspiration, and I mean, since we've been devoting our time and our energy to game development, I've had and you've had a good number of ideas that we've just been jotting down as we're going, because we're focusing on the one project right now and bringing it to fruition before we get distracted by anything else. But I'm sure that as we do the same thing of going like, okay, well, I can't think of any other game like this. So let's start like looking for it. I'm sure some of our ideas we'll find.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll find are already done. So we'll scrap those. And then other ones we'll find that much like this is like, this is something new.
Yeah.
This is something different, something unique, or, Well,
of course, there's always the, and maybe we'll talk about this as our topic for the next video then, is the concentrating more on how you are like giving value to other people or the world, right? Like, and how, if you're able to do it better or, in a new way enough that you're bringing something to someone, like it doesn't always, like everything in the world doesn't always have to be, oh, nobody's done that before. Exactly. But if you can do something in a way that brings some other kind of connection with a different,
new wrinkle.
something where you're able to, provide something to somebody. And because that's the thing in the world, right? Bring beauty and connection with each other. So that's like the goal, right?
Yeah. Live your life so that you can be inspired, like make time to let your mind wander, make time to go out and do the things that will make you feel inspired. Like we've been gardening a lot, which is out in the garden, or I should say because of the garden was our inspiration.
It was the garden.
And so it's like, would we have had this same game idea if we didn't spend our time gardening? I don't know. Maybe we would have, but I can tell you that there's a large amount of people out there that would tell you not to waste your time doing gardening if it wasn't directly contributing to whatever it is you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily the case.
Or that it's easy to neglect those types of things because you feel like you're doing something frivolous at the expense of something else you might actually then be missing out on the thing that could have inspired your next big thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you know, we're talking about it from a creation aspect of doing our card game, but I mean, you can apply this to not just games, not just card or board games or video games or life. You can apply it to any, you know, creative pursuit. Well,
they say that about relationships and stuff too, right? You know, like you gotta
make time. Yeah.
Right.
So there you go. So we're going to be uploading these. We don't have a schedule yet for uploading these sorts of little discussion about game design and design theory, I guess you might say. But we'll be uploading them as we work on our game and as we're feeling inspired to. and yeah, so, you know, we hope that you'll, you know, check us out here again. And I'm sure in our description and comments and all that stuff, we'll have links for you to follow if you're interested in seeing exactly what our game is.
Yeah. So, evenoddsgames.com.
Yeah.
Is our game company. And we have it's either going to be probably wordy or that wordy card game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you're at the end, if you've made it through to this far, thank you for watching.
Yeah.
And go ahead and subscribe to Even Odds Show, perhaps.
For more design, game design and related content.
Yeah, hopefully we'll even things out. With the odds of doing better.
Bye.
Bye.